YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 5 2025 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a disappointing and sad against the spread week in terms of how the predictions have gone. Definitely the games that I should have been able to track. They looked good for about 60 to 70% of them, and then they ended up going into a tough spot. But to be fair, in a spread argument, if you thought that the Chargers were going to lose to the Giants as 6-point dogs, congratulations. Congratulations to you, because you obviously had more faith in the Giants or thought of the Los Angeles Chokers, who they showed up to be yesterday afternoon, than I thought they would. But that was a crazy one. Browns-Lions was kind of hanging around competitively for like the first 50 to 60% of that one. But then once the Browns, Joe Flacco, gifted the Lions 2 turnovers, and then he fumbled again, and just kept giving the ball over to the Lions, and they had a special teams touchdown, that's how you cover a 6.5-point spread by about 10 plus points. And then the other one I'm still really mad about is Texans-Titans, that I had a 7.5 point, I think a 6.5 point cover. It was 6-0 through 3 quarters. How was I to expect that the Texans were going to score 20 more points after that, and the Titans were going to put up nothing? If only the Texans' offense, which had been anemic and pathetic through 3 quarters, only stayed that way in the 4th, I could have got that covered. But I guess needless to say, my against the spread record this week was dreadful. My straight up record, I do have a chance, because I am recording this video today with the doubleheader on Monday night. And again, I'm taking the Dolphins minus 2.5 and the Broncos minus 7.5 tonight. But my straight up record is 9-4-1. My against the spread record this week was 6-8. That equals a 43% against the spread. Straight up, that equals 68% straight up so far. So overall, I should have a good week straight up. Excuse me. Straight up, depending on what happens against the spread. I've been basically getting people their money back. Like, I'm not mad that I've been able to hit around 500 every week, but it's just when I make these predictions and I watch these games, I get mad because either I look solid for at least over half the game, or I'm in a state where by the end of the game, the other way, like with the Eagles and Bucks, I took the Bucks plus 3.5. They're driving down the field. If Baker doesn't throw that pick, we could be in a tie game, or it could have come down to a field goal where I could have won that one. So, again, getting the 500 against the spread, I'll take that, and if you took my advice, you're at least returning your money. But, again, of how these games are going, and who expected a tie anyway? And that's another terrible thing with a tie. In a tie, the dog wins because you had the 6.5. But also, you don't even get a win straight up. So, and I always hate having to put ties in my records, but here we are. But now overall for the year through 62 games, I am 28-33-1 against the spread. And straight up now, I am 43-18-1 straight up. So that equals 46% against the spread. And 70.02% or 70.2% straight up. I will take that. It's been definitely one of the better starts I've had. It sucks having that one because we ended up witnessing the second highest scoring tie in NFL history last night. Someone had watched all 4 hours of that thrilling but aggravating Packers-Cowboys game. But, you know, for the week, though, it was just a bizarre week in so many different ways. The Giants game, kudos to Jackson Dart. First rookie to beat Jim Harbaugh in the Charger era. And only the 3rd time in Jim Harbaugh's career he's lost to a rookie quarterback. He put up about 160 total yards, which wasn't spectacular, but it was enough. And his runs definitely were a spark. But also just watching that Charger offensive line, after seeing Joe Alt have a high ankle sprain, so he's going to be out several weeks. Best wishes to him. That Charger offensive line could not save, just or protect him to do really anything well. The only thing that saved them offensively was Amarion Hampton having a fantastic game. But that was surprising. Anybody that watched the Pats game, there were some blowouts. Texans, Titans. Titans are the worst team in the league. Brian Callahan needs to be thrown out into the Music City to get eviscerated by the media and just needs to leave Nashville like Elvis and go away deep in the sand and eat fried banana sandwiches. But the Titans are awful. That was terrible. Vikings Steelers, as I watched that game, that was actually a pretty entertaining game. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I thought, actually, for at least the first 75% of that game, played a very good game. Rodgers threw for 200 yards. They actually ran the ball for over 100 yards. Kenneth Gainwell had his best game, I think, of his career that I've seen in a very long time, or of his career. That was fantastic. And the Vikings, though, they did kind of hold on. It was odd that there was a moment in the game where if you're watching and you see, like, they try to go for it on 4th and 2 when they're, up 10, they should just have kicked the field goal to go up 13. Greg Olsen stupidly tried to going from 2 to 3 scores would be a huge point, but it's like adding the points in that situation was a huge factor. And again, the Vikings ended up getting the ball back. It just Carson Wentz threw it into the ground and killed the momentum of the game just off that. And but kudos to the Steelers. They're 3-1 of how the AFC North is looking. The Pittsburgh Steelers might actually win the AFC North. Something they haven't done in a couple years, but just a surprising outcome I didn't expect from the Steelers, so far. But that game was, nuts. I talked, the Panthers-Pats game. Commanders-Falcons. The Commanders and Falcons, man, are just like Jekyll and Hyde, man. I mean, the Falcons are just Jekyll and Hyde. How the heck do you go from getting shut out by the Panthers by 30 points to then playing the Commanders, even though with their backup quarterback, though Jaden Daniels is supposed to be coming back next week? How did you do that? And then you put up 34 points and look like one of the most consistent offenses in the league with Drake London, with Kyle Pitts, with Darnell Mooney, even though Darnell Mooney did suffer an injury. Thankfully, they're on their bye this week. But, they look like one of the more consistent and talented offenses in the league, and they needed every one of those points because they ended up winning a 7-point game, 34-27 against the Commanders. But that was a bizarre ending. And then I'm trying to think here through a lot of the other games. Eagles-Bucks. I don't know what happened with the Eagles, but through the first half, Jalen Hurts was 15-16, threw for 120 yards, had 3 total touchdowns. They were up 24-6. Then in the second half, he goes 0 for 8 and doesn't even get a passing yard, and the offense scores nothing, or the offense gets 1 rushing touchdown and basically collapses a 24-6 game to a 31-25 ending. So they go on a 12. They end up losing the second half by 12 points. Thank goodness the Eagles win, but the Eagles are playing like the 2024 Chiefs, which is kind of concerning that they keep getting in these one-score games. But objectively, you hold on there. And then Colts-Rams, that was a great game. The Indianapolis Colts, to me, at least showed that they are a legitimate NFL team this year, and I believe they will make the playoffs and maybe arguably win the division. They played with the Rams incredibly tough. Nobody outside of Puka really made a significant impact. I know you can say Devontae caught a touchdown, and Tutu caught the game-winning touchdown, but those are just one big explosive plays or one key play. Puka Nacua was really the only person that made a significant impact for the Rams offense. And Adonai Mitchell, I feel terrible for the guy, but he made a terrible mistake, as a young player would, by celebrating a little too early before the ball crossed the goal line and caused a touchback on a touchdown. And Daniel Jones, as effective as he played and as solid as he played, he did have 2 terrible turnovers. They gave you just the old glimpses of Daniel Jones, where he's not Danny Dollars, he's still Danny Half Dollars. But the Colts overall, though, you have to be really impressed with how they played that one. The Jags-Niners. The Niners can't generate a pass rush without Nick Bosa. And Brock Purdy. The Jags are leading the league in forcing turnovers. They've at least forced 3 defensive turnovers in every game this year, which is incredibly impressive. And again, I think the Jags, they have been probably the biggest surprise in the league, or one of them, because I don't think anybody expected the Duval man of how awkward he is and just how the Jags have played to be in this position. But the Jags, are a good football team. Travis Etienne has played incredibly well. I think he's ran for 392 or 394 yards so far. He's had a career resurgence this year, running really well. Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas have made some been effective receivers. Trevor's played pretty much efficient, more often than not turnover-free football. And I think the Jags, they're going to hang around. In the AFC South, nobody would have thought the Colts and Jags would be as consistent or competent teams as they've been over the first quarter of the year, but here we are. And the Niners, also, you just have to worry about Brock Purdy. He's turning a bit into a turnover machine because he had 3 turnovers yesterday. They had 4 as a team, but those 3 turnovers basically were the difference in the game as to why the Niners lost that game. Ravens-Chiefs, I don't even want to talk about that one. All-time disaster. Lamar getting hurt, and I'll explain that in my Ravens pick. And then Packers-Cowboys, and I'll get into my picks. That was a all-time great game that I hate the NFL having these ties. And this is the thing I would say, is that the NFL should take the college rule. Just keep playing. Or even if you want to say you don't do the college rule where you just keep going back and forth. And the one thing I hate about college football, and I don't know if anybody would agree, is college football, I hate that you don't kick off. You just start at the 25. I think at least in college you should just kick the ball off before, you get the ball starting at the 25. At least in the NFL you kick off, but they should just keep going. Or get into a field goal contest. With all these 50-yard field goals and block kicks, make overtime if the period ends into a kicking contest just to prove you can get a win, But I hate ties. But those are my quick thoughts on last week. Now let's go into my picks. But before I do that, let me tell everybody the buys real quickly. So we are into the buy season this week until week 13. All 32 teams will be on buys. So there is a 14-game week this week. But with that being said, the Atlanta Falcons, Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers, and Philadelphia Eagles, or the Atlanta Falcons, Chicago Bears, the Green Bay Packers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, right state, wrong team, are all on bye this week. So you have Michael Penix, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Caleb Williams, DeAndre Swift, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, the Packers defense, Brandon McManus, Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs, Matt Golden, Romeo Dobbs, Steelers defense, Chris Boswell, Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth. If you have any of these players on your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this weekend. Alright, so time for my picks and time for my picks for this week. So on Thursday, when the 3-1 San Francisco 49ers travel to Los Angeles to take on the 3-1 Los Angeles Rams, the Los Angeles Rams are 4-point favorites in this game. Give me Los Angeles here, -4, and Los Angeles straight up. Then the next game, in the second straight game for the Minnesota Vikings, being in London, when the 2-2 Minnesota Vikings travel to take on the Cleveland Browns, who are the designated home team, to take on the 1-3 Cleveland Browns. The Minnesota Vikings are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to say this, there is no caveat here. Regardless if JJ or Carson plays, I will take the Vikings to win if JJ is active. But the Minnesota Vikings are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Minnesota here to win straight up. But this game is just going to be so awful and low scoring defensively. I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns here, +3.5. Then the next game, when the 1-3 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Indianapolis to take on the 3-1 Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Indianapolis here, -6.5. Indianapolis, straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-3 New York Giants travel to New Orleans to take on the 0-4 New Orleans Saints. The New York Giants are 1-point favorites in this game. Give me the New York Giants here, -1. And the New York Giants, straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-2-1 Dallas Cowboys travel to New York to take on the 0-4 or 1-3 New York Jets. The Dallas Cowboys are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Dallas here, -2.5, and Dallas, straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-3 or 2-2 Denver Broncos travel to Philadelphia to take on the 4-0 Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Philadelphia here, -4.5, and Philadelphia, straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-4 or 1-3 Miami Dolphins travel to Carolina to take on the 1-3 Carolina Panthers. The Miami Dolphins are 1.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Miami here, -1.5, and Miami, straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-3 Houston Texans travel to Baltimore to take on the 1-3 Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are 4.5-point favorites in this game. I will say this, I just want to say this to everybody in the video. My against the spread pick is going to remain the same regardless of what happens. The Houston Texans are 4.5-point dogs in this game, so I'm going to take Houston here, +4.5. I am not expecting Lamar Jackson to play this weekend due to that hamstring injury. We don't know the severity of it, and I still, as I'm recording this video, have not heard from the MRI how long, if he's going to be out, or if he's going to be out, put on the IR, or out an extended amount of time. But as of this moment, I'm going to say that he is not going to play, so I'm going to take the Houston Texans to win straight up. But obviously, if Lamar Jackson is able to play on this hamstring injury, I will take the Baltimore Ravens here to win straight up, but I'll take the Houston Texans plus 4.5. I'm just offering that caveat there for all my viewers out there going into this game. So I just want to, like I said, I think the Houston Texans, I think the Baltimore Ravens are not going to have Lamar Jackson this weekend. So that means Cooper Rush will get his first start of the season. And I do not think, even with as bad as the Texans offense has been, with how bad our defense is and how banged up our defense is, I think the Houston Texans should be able to have a nice, effective offensive game to win regardless. But if Lamar is in the game, I think the Ravens should be able to beat a Texan team, or we should be able to get enough stops defensively on a terrible offense as bad as the Texans' offensive line is. But right now I'm going to say the Houston Texans win straight up, and the Houston Texans will cover the 4.5 points right now. But if Lamar is active, I'm going to change my straight up pick, but keep my against spread pick. All right, then the next game, when the 0-4 Tennessee Titans travel to Arizona, take on the 2-2 Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are 9.5 point favorites in this game. Give me Arizona here, minus 9.5, and Arizona straight up. Then the next game, and one of the bigger games of the weekend, when the 3-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to Seattle, take on the 3-1 Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me, in a slight upset here, give me Tampa Bay here, plus 3, and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-1 Detroit Lions travel to Cincinnati to take on the 2-2 or 3-1 Cincinnati Bengals. The Detroit Lions are 8.5 point favorites in this game. Give me Detroit here, minus 8.5. And Detroit, straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-2 Washington Commanders travel to Los Angeles to take on the 3-1 Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers are 2.5 point favorites in this game. Give me Los Angeles here, minus 2.5. And Los Angeles, straight up. Then the next game, the Sunday night game, when the 2-2 New England Patriots travel to Buffalo to take on the 4-0 Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are 8.5 point favorites in this game. Give me Buffalo here to win straight up, but I'm going to take the New England Patriots here to cover plus 8.5. Then finally, in the Monday night game, when the 2-2 Kansas City Chiefs travel to Jacksonville to take on the 3-1 Jacksonville Jaguars, the Kansas City Chiefs are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Kansas City here, minus 3, and Kansas City straight up. All right, it's time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Los Angeles Rams over the San Francisco 49ers. This one, to me, comes down to the Rams just fundamentally, even without their corner, Witherspoon breaking his collarbone, even with, just kind of the mesh of what they have at, talent, the Rams have been fairly healthy, and in my opinion, they're the third best team in the NFC behind the Detroit Lions and Philadelphia Eagles. As of this moment, you could debate the Lions and Rams. I wouldn't be mad if people thought the Rams were better than the Lions. But I just love what this Rams team is doing. This Rams team has a phenomenal defensive front. The linebacker play is really solid. The secondary can hold its own with that rush, and I just think the Rams should be able to punish a San Francisco offensive line that caused a lot of havoc for the Jags, or caused a lot of havoc for the Niners yesterday. Christian McCaffrey only ran for about 50 yards. He had more impact through the air. The Niners have a bunch of banged-up receivers in Jawan Jennings. Ricky Pearsall at the game with the injury. The Niners just banged up across the receiving room. Maybe George Kittle can come back. I don't know. Such a short turnaround. He was on the IR. Well, no, I'm sorry. He got on the IR after week 1. So George Kittle's not even playing. This Niners team is just decimated with injuries. And if Brock Purdy just continues to keep turning the ball over at a consistent rate, I think this Rams defense, it's not going to be like the Jags, to where if the Niners commit 2 to 3 more turnovers again, I think the Rams will be able to capitalize and get a very big and decisive win at home against a Niners team that has played well and has played in spirit of their injuries. But I just think this Rams team, they're healthier right now. That receiving core is, fantastic. And I think the Rams are just playing at a much higher and consistent and healthier level compared to the Niners. It's a division game, and the Niners could punch people in the mouth. They could surprise people, but just watching what the Niners have gone through over the last several weeks with Mac, with Brock, who I just heard, has another injury concern now, I objectively look at the Rams here and say they are a better and consistent football team compared to the 49ers at this point. So, that's why I like the Los Angeles Rams here, -4, and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. Then the next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the Cleveland Browns. This one to me comes down to, I watched the Cleveland Browns, and I have to tell everybody, like, the Cleveland Browns are so pitiful offensively. They're so pitiful. The only positive thing you could look at is Quiddy Jenkins kind of becoming that number one running back, and he actually had a solid game against the Lions. And the Browns defense tried, man. Like, the Lions offense, which had gotten over 500 yards, 400 to 500 yards the last couple games, I think they were held to under 300 total yesterday. But just watching Joe Flacco constantly turn the ball over, get sacked. He couldn't. He's like 30. I think I saw a stat this today. He's had the most pass attempts in the league, but he has the 32nd completion percentage, and he's 34th in touchdowns. Like, this Browns offense with Joe Flacco, it's amazing that somehow they beat the Packers. Because, like, if that Packers game if they don't make a 10-point comeback, this should be Dylan Gabriel's first start. Just because I feel like it's just time for a change. And the Vikings, and look, this is how bad this game is. The Vikings offense lost 2 of their offensive linemen yesterday, and the Pittsburgh defensive line, 8. They were fantastic. They swarmed the ball to the Minnesota Vikings. They swarmed, like, to the ball. They got 6 sacks. They couldn't run the ball. Like, Carson had 2, tip ball turnovers. And these 2 defenses are very good. And if JJ is healthy, I honestly would tell you, I don't know if 10 points get scored either way with these 2 teams with how bad they played at the quarterback position if JJ plays. I know JJ's there and he might lightly practice, but I'm going to take the Vikings here because at least what I saw out of the Vikings, they have better talent, and I just trust Carson Wentz to play a little bit of a better game compared to Joe Flacco. And that's what I'm going with here. Could the Browns win this game? Absolutely. And that's what I'm taking them plus 3.5. Because this is a game that if you have anybody in fantasy playing in this game, good luck. The only things that you should play on fantasy are maybe the kickers and the defenses. Because these offenses are going to have a tough, difficult time moving the ball on one another. And to me, basically, it's like, what offensive line can hold up and protect better and run the ball better to win the game? Because I don't expect both quarterbacks to have great games at all. Unless Carson can just throw bombs, or have enough time to throw deep passes or in routes, passing. But I just think the Vikings, from what I saw, like in the Browns, the Browns have just been thoroughly whipped 2 of the 4 weeks, and you could argue the Browns should be a 500 team if their kicker didn't miss an extra point or a field goal. But if you're telling me between the 2-2 Vikings that have kind of been up and down, or the Browns, what I've seen, I'll take the Vikings. Also, they do have the advantage of staying over in Europe anyway, so they're already used to the time shift and all that. The Browns still have to adjust to going over there. It's not the biggest of change because the Browns have been there in the past, but in this game, I'm just going to go with the better quarterback, the already adjusted team, and I just think Carson Wentz should be able to outplay Joe Flacco in a gritty, ugly international game. As an American, to the British, I apologize for what you're about to see in London this weekend. So, best of luck there. So, that's like Minnesota here to win straight up, and I'll take Cleveland plus 3.5. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts over the Las Vegas Raiders. This game comes down to me to where the Las Vegas Raiders are just an abject failure. Like, Geno Smith. And I just want to just take a minute, or take a second and say, everybody, and everybody knows, I'm a big Russell Wilson. And everybody clowned me, or everybody's clowned me for seeing Russ evolve into a backup, and it's sad, even though, again, the Giants, it did work, the spark happened, and all that stuff. But can we say the same thing that's going on in Vegas? Can we say the same exact thing? That we're seeing Geno become a sad version of what Mr. Unlimited did once he left Seattle? because Geno Smith has thrown 7 interceptions. He's thrown 6 of them in 2 home games. That Bears offense was terrible. They couldn't even capitalize on that many opportunities. The Bears' run defense, like Aston Genty, they ran for over 200 yards on the ground. Max Crosby looked like the best defensive player on the planet yesterday against that team, and they couldn't win the game because they got another field goal block, which has been kind of crazy over, this is the year of field goal blocks in the league, just in so many different ways. But Geno Smith is having a Russell Wilson deterioration, and it's a glorious thing to see because now, you can't blame Russ for that. You can't blame Russ that Geno Smith is an absolute bot. I know there's a guy named Mitchell Renz who does the Raiders Report that a couple weeks ago said, oh man, it's unfair to compare Geno Smith to Derek Carr. Yeah, you know what? That might have been an insult to Derek Carr because Geno Smith has been an abject failure of a quarterback, and I knew he was going to be a failure of a quarterback because the Raiders have nothing around him. Jacoby's not a number 1 receiver. Brock Bowers, they have that tight end, and it's terrible because I have him in fantasy, but the Raiders just can't operate an offense. The offensive line can't protect at times, even on the 4th down run. How pathetic was that? They ran Genty right up the middle, and he even lost an extra yard. Maybe it didn't matter because the field goal got blocked, but the Raiders are just an abject failure of a franchise, and they deserve everything that they got for giving Geno Smith a 3-year extension where he was going to suck like a backup quarterback was going to play. Okay, Geno's not good. The Raiders are basically wasting 3 years with Pete Carroll and Geno to get absolutely nowhere, and the Raiders are going to be back at the bottom because Pete's going to be old enough to retire, and Tom Brady is starting to look more and more like the Michael Jordan of ownership. Where it's not looking great. And for the Colts here, look, the Colts better run game, better defense. Just Daniel Jones is going to outplay Geno. They're going to be at home. They should be able to run the ball more effectively. The Colts offensive line is pretty consistent and protective. And I think the Colts just are playing better all-around football. They've run the ball better. Daniel Jones is protective of the ball better. They've been able to get other, Tyler Warren's had a better year than Brock Bowers, unfortunately, which is kind of crazy because Tyler Warren is becoming the Brock Bowers this year in this offense. And I just think the Colts are just fundamentally just playing and running, Their style of play has been consistent, and they've played more quality and consistent football compared to the Raiders in every which way. And even this game is somehow close. If Geno and Daniel Jones switch roles, I still think there's a way where the Raiders could even, blow this game at the end of the day with how the Raiders just have played over the last few weeks. Also, the Raiders defense is just terrible. And I think Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, if he's healthy, they should be able to move the ball pretty consistently and well against a terrible Raiders defense. So that's why I get Indianapolis here, -6.5, and Indianapolis straight up. The next game, the New York Giants over the New Orleans Saints. This game comes down to me to where, look, there are 2 games this week. This one in Tampa Bay at Seattle, where my reasoning here is not going to be the greatest. And I would tell you, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the other team won the game. Because there's so much, maybe in the other team's favor, or you're just looking at the teams. And this is one of them. And the only reason why I'm going with the Giants is because I saw Jackson Dart win the game. Yes, the Giants' defense was fantastic. Dexter Lawrence, I felt terrible for him. He was 2 yards away from a big man, thick pick 6, which, you love to see those. But the reason why I'm going is the Saints, Spencer Rattler, and the Saints have been spunky. They're 0-4, but there are plenty of teams that are 500 or 1-3 that I think the Saints are clearly a better team than, even though the Saints haven't won a football game. And I also know about the Malik Neighbors injury, which was confirmed today to be a torn ACL. So I understand that the Giants are going to be incredibly limited on offense outside of Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo's legs, with Wan'Dale Robinson now becoming the number 1 wide receiver. I know the Giants are in a massive hill. And Jackson Dart, had one moment, but he had about 160 total yards and 2 touchdowns. And if he keeps running the ball with how bad the Giants' offensive line can be at times, he's not going to be able to survive the year. He was already dealing with a hamstring injury, and he got put in the tent for concussion protocol. But from what I saw out of the moxie of that kid, the consistency of making some timely throws, getting some runs, and the confidence they have, I just think the Giants are going to be able to grind out a win here. I thought this was the game that he should have started in the first place. And look, could the Saints win this game? Sure they could. The Saints are a bit healthier. The Saints have, played more consistently. And Jackson Dart, he's still a rookie. But Spencer Rattler, Jackson Dart already has more wins than Spencer Rattler has in 10 tries. And I honestly think for the Saints, even though it's been incredibly entertaining to watch and competitive, if you can't beat the Malik Neighborless Jackson Dart Giants, you need to bench Spencer Rattler immediately. Spencer Rattler's last career start, in my opinion, should be this Sunday. Because if he can't win this game, which I'm not expecting him to, then it should be Shug season for the rest of the year, in my opinion. That's how bad I think the Giants are going to be off here. But I think from what I saw of Jackson Dart, and I think the Giants defense is better than the Saints defense in the grand scheme of things, maybe outside of secondary, I think the Giants find a way to grind out a win to get themselves a little bit of a pick-me-up before the Eagles tear it all down next Thursday. But that's all I like the New York Giants here, -1, and the New York Giants straight up. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the New York Jets. This game comes down to me to where I'm just going to take Dak over Fields. Both defenses are god-awful. The Cowboys can't generate a pass rush. The Jets can't generate a pass rush. But you're telling me which quarterback is going to play better? I've seen the Cowboys' offensive line. Micah only got sacked once. Like, if the Cowboys' offensive line without Tyler Booker can hold up that well against the Jet defensive line that has talent but that has really not produced anything this year, this game... And Dak's played incredibly well. If the Cowboys would have beat the Eagles, Dak could have been in the MVP conversation. He's played tremendous football. And in a game like this, I also think there is a little bit of a wrench factor. Dak and them should talk about that 2019 game where the Jets were winless and the Cowboys were coming off of, a huge moment of momentum, and then the Jets just pants the Cowboys with Sam Darnold and shocked the NFL world that week because I don't think anybody expected the Jets to win. I don't think the Cowboys are as good as they were back in 2019 or that level, but it kind of feels that same way with the Jets and Cowboys, to where it's like the Cowboys and Jets, where like the Jets have been competitive, in 2 of the 3 weeks. Obviously tonight, we'll see. I think they'll be competitive against a Dolphins team that isn't that great. But I just look at the Cowboys and go, in a game where both defenses are awful, and I know Trayvon Diggs is hurt, and the Jets have defensive injuries, and they could have offensive injuries after tonight. In a shootout game with offenses that you're going to trust, you're going to take the better quarterback in this regard, and I believe that's Dak Prescott. Also, Dak Prescott does not lose in MetLife Stadium that often. He goes to that stadium a lot, so he'll be back there again. But again, the Cowboys, better offense and better quarterback in a shootout-based game with terrible defense. You go with the better quarterback and the better coach in Brian Schottenheimer and Dak Prescott. So that's all like Dallas here -2.5, and Dallas straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Denver Broncos. This game to me comes down to the Philadelphia Eagles just are finding ways to win. And I think with the Eagles, I think the offensive line should be able to hold up against Denver's pass rush. Denver does lead the league in sacks. And I just think, again, Jalen's legs can be a big difference. I think, where you have AJ and Surtain, which is going to be a fantastic matchup of number 1 wide receiver and number 1 corner. I look at the Eagles here, just, even though, again, they did lose. They've had a lot of guys in the IR. But the Denver receiving core just hasn't been great. And I know it's October, and maybe it's a turnaround for Sean Payton, which is crazy. I don't know if people knew this. I found this out today. That Sean Payton his teams throughout his entire career, he's never really been a great early start coach. Through 60 games, the last September game is tonight for Sean Payton. He is 500 through 60 career games in September. So these slow starts, these are kind of common with Sean Payton in this run. And so maybe in October that you kind of start flipping the switch. But I look at Philadelphia here, just better overall roster. I think they should be able to run the ball more effectively. The Colts were able to run the ball for over 160 yards. Justin Herbert was able to have a field day with big moments with Keenan and Ladd. If they commit to throwing the football like they were able to show in the second half of Week 3, the Eagles can definitely move the ball against the Denver defense. Daniel Jones did it. Justin Herbert did it in big spots. And I think the Eagles should be able to neutralize that pass rush that the Eagles have, that the Broncos have with the best offensive line in football. If Denver can get pressure on Jalen, they can limit the run game, or Kevin Patula just gets real conservative and not, trying to move the ball, I think, the Broncos can compete in this game. But just watching the Eagles, they're going to be able to find a way to win games with their run game, with their defense. And if they don't turn the ball over, the Eagles should win. And the Eagles, at least, in every game so far this year, have been able to force one turnover where they haven't turned it over. And I think that's going to be the difference, especially a guy with Bo Nix that's already had 2 games, or he's already had a couple games this year where he's had multiple turnovers that have given, the opposing team the opportunity to win. Also, I do want to shout out the Eagles real quick. First team since 1979 to block 3 straight kicks and 2 field goals and a punt block that was caught by Sidney Brown to go for a touchdown. So, should be an interesting game if Denver can kind of keep it close, or Denver's pass rush can get to Jalen and the Eagles try to just run the ball. But I'm going to take the Eagles because they're home, healthier, and I just trust that you've been able to see teams run the ball on Denver consistently. And I think with Saquon Barkley, who kind of looks like has not nearly had the start people expected, I think he can have a huge game against the Denver run defense that has been shown to get gashed plenty of times over the year so far. I think the Eagles are more than willing to expose yet again. So that's like Philadelphia here, -4.5, and Philadelphia straight up. The next game, the Miami Dolphins of the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers suck. I'm sorry for Panthers fans and watch. You all just suck. Like, the defense can't stop anything. Derek Brown's the most overrated defensive tackle in the game. They gave up 2 special teams touchdowns. And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is not, like, a credit to the Dolphins, who I have, winning tonight. And even, here's the thing, even if the Dolphins somehow lose to the Jets, I'll take the Dolphins to beat the Panthers. Just because, like, I've watched the Panthers for weeks. And objectively, outside of in 12 quarters, they've had 6 good ones. The other half of the time, if you watch the Carolina Panthers, that's a unmitigated disaster of a football team that can't stop anybody, is vanilla offensively. They can't protect Bryce. They can't run the ball with Chuba. Ted McMillan is their only legitimate receiver. The kicking game, Fitzgerald's had moments, but he missed a big kick. It's just like, that Panther team is just, outside of the Titans, the Panthers are the equivalent of the Titans in their conference. That's the worst team in the NFC by a mile. And at least from what I've seen out of the Dolphins, and what I'm thinking I'll see out of the Dolphins tonight, I think the Dolphins should be able to go into Carolina and win a gritty kind of... excuse me, a gritty, tough game against the Panther team that's just one of the worst teams of football. And from what I've seen out of the Dolphins, at least through the last couple weeks, they're not a great team or even a good team, but they're better than the Panthers. So, that's like Miami here, -1.5, and Miami straight up. The next game, the Houston Texans over the Baltimore Ravens. This game comes down to me to where, again, I don't think the Ravens are going to have Lamar Jackson. And the Houston Texans defense, and I'm going to shout out real quickly, Matt Burke, I know it's D'Amico's defense, so before anybody says anything, yeah, I get it. D'Amico and them just aren't great. They're terrible. I fully get that. But I just think for the Ravens, like, that Ravens defense is the worst defense in the league. We're giving up huge gash yards. Like, Patrick Mahomes had his best game in about 2 years. He threw 4 touchdowns. He's thrown 250 touchdowns. He's the fastest player to 250 touchdowns. And if there's ever a game that, you need to get right offensively with Jaden Higgins, with Dalton, with Chubb, with maybe Joe Mixon coming back this week, it's the Baltimore Ravens defense. And again, I don't think the Texans are even that good. Through 3 quarters yesterday, they were held to 6 points against the Titans. But, like, I just cannot trust if Cooper Rush is our quarterback. I think, again, like, next week, if Lamar is healthy, it's the most ugly force in America against the consistently movable object. It's going to be a Houston offense that objectively has looked incredibly inept, and I believe has scored 5 touchdowns in 4 games against a defense that just constantly is giving up touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, where they can't stop the run, they can't stop the pass, the secondary's banged up, the defensive line's banged up, the linebackers are banged up. If the Texans cannot move the ball on this current iteration of the Ravens defense, they are in for a world of hurt. And I believe my pick for the AFC South, which I already believe is going to be dead now, was completely wrong. If the Texans can't move the ball and win this game, if Cooper Rush at the quarterback. It should be a great game regardless, and I think the Houston Texans defense, I will give that defense credit and its respect for what it's done. That I do think it can limit the Ravens offense, especially with the injuries we have. But I don't think Lamar is going to play, and I just think Cooper Rush, even if we give Derrick Henry the ball, which is jarring to me that yesterday he only had 8 carries. But in this one, I'm going to take the Texans here because I don't expect Lamar to win. Just because they have the better defense, and if there was ever a defense that you could play that will get you right as an offense, it's the Baltimore Ravens defense this year so far. And I think the Texans, with the weapons they have and the confidence they need, they should be able to, for the first time in their franchise history, come into Baltimore and get a win. Especially if Lamar doesn't play. So that's why I like Houston here, plus 4.5, and Houston straight up. The next game, the Arizona Cardinals over the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are the worst team in football. They can't run the ball. Can't throw. Cam Ward's regressing further back. The Jarius Sneed and Amani Hooker don't care. They're irrelevant to the team. The only great thing they have is Jeff Simmons. And the Cardinals are just the Cardinals. And again, they really couldn't run the ball. Kyler and the offense couldn't do anything. Kyler and Marvin don't seem like they even know that they're teammates or could play with each other. But when you look at how inept the Cardinals have been, you just have to look at the Titans and go, until I see Cam Ward and Brian Callahan somehow put together a game plan to win a football game, I'm going to take, the Titans every week, or their opponent every week. It's unfortunate, and I haven't picked the Titans all year because of that, but they just continue to show me what reason do I have to take the Titans. I think next week or 2 weeks they play the Raiders, which are going to be one of the ugly games of the year, but again, from what I've seen, I would take the Raiders to win that football game. You're going to feel like the Titans just have no inspiration, no hope, no offensive creativity, a defense that's quit, and a fan base that's quit against a team in the Cardinals that, being 3-2, you'll gladly be happy about that, but their 3 wins are against 2 winless teams in the Panthers, who should arguably be winless after what happened. But, the Cardinals beating up 3 tomato cans in their first 5 games, they're happy about it, but then when Green Bay comes, a rested Packer team, I think when they go to Lambeau, that's when they'll learn that, okay, the Cardinals are the Cardinals, and they're in for, a long mid-year best year once again. So that's why I like Arizona here, minus 9.5, and Arizona straight up. The next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Seattle Seahawks. This game to me is the other game that it's like Giants Saints, to where I'm taking Tampa for the sole reason that I think Baker's going to outplay Darnold. But I know Seattle's roster right now is probably healthier than the Bucs. They're about even in terms of skill. I like Seattle's momentum. Seattle is a well-coached team by Mike Macdonald. They don't get that many penalties. They have a young roster. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Seattle wins. And just with Tampa's injury, we'll probably know Mike Evans. They lost one of their tackles and one of their corner, Greg Gaines, another one of their defensive tackles. And it just Tampa was getting rolled by the Philadelphia offense. And Seattle has similar offensive components. I just think, in a spot like this, Baker and them shouldn't be down as big a hole. And I just think for the Bucs, if you're going to tell me which player is going to make a mistake or two is going to be the difference in the game, I think it's going to be Sam. He did it against the Niners, even when Brock Purdy had a couple turnovers. And I just think Baker plays a cleaner game than Darnold, which is the difference in the Bucs or Seahawks winning this game. Tampa should be happy that they were able to make a pretty, impressive second half run to make the game competitive. The turnovers by Bucky and Baker were significant. Even though, again, Emike Ibuka, fantastic play, definitely the second best receiver on the team already. And Bucky Irvin just running up the sideline, having Jahad Campbell fall on his face there was incredibly impressive. And really explosive. And I think they can have that same opportunity against a Seattle defense that let Marvin Harrison, make some big plays and big drives to get them back into the game last Thursday. But in this game, when you have two kind of equal teams, even though the Bucs are hurt, I'm going to go with the better quarterback. And in this one with Baker and Sam, even though Sam has won the most games since the start of last year and has played very good football, I'm going to just take, in the Battle 2018 draft class, I'll take the first pick to beat the third pick any day. So, that's like Tampa Bay here +3 and Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, the Detroit Lions over the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm taking Detroit here because the Bengals defense is awful. And they don't have a quarterback. Joe's hurt. Jake's going to keep turning the ball over consistently. And the Lions just have shown you through the last, couple weeks with their offense, they should be able to run the ball at will without maybe possibly Shamar Stewart-led defensive line. The Bengals can't generate a pass rush. And I think Jake Brown is going to be so bad. I do think the Lions, though, have to be concerned about the corners. Because I think DJ Reed and somebody else, Kirby Joseph, left the game. Like, their secondary is getting thin. I don't think it's going to matter against the Bengals with Jake Browning, a quarterback. But I think that is something to watch out for as the rest of the year moves forward. But I'm going to take the Lions here. Just dominant offensive line, better running game. Amon-Ra's been fantastic. I don't think anybody in the Bengals defense can catch up with Jameson. And I think Sam Laporta and Brock Wright should be able to have solid games in the middle of the defense for the Lions to win. And I also just don't think anybody can block Hutch for the Bengals offensive line. He's going to wreck that game from a Cincinnati offensive perspective. So, that's what I like Detroit here -8.5 and Detroit straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Washington Commanders. This game comes down to me to where I'm going to trust that the Chargers at home, and I know the Commanders will have a bunch of fans out there. LA really has never had that great of a home field advantage. But I just think the Chargers were so bad and so mad that they're going to take on a Washington team that defensively, I can't see them getting a lot of good pressure. Maybe, even though, again, losing both tackles could be the difference in the thing that pushes them forward. But I'm going to take the Chargers here just because I feel like Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh are going to make a huge statement saying that even though, again, the offensive line will be massive concerns, we should be able to run the ball effectively with Marion. Justin Herbert's better than Penix, and the weapons we have, we should be able to move the ball up and down the field at a more higher ease. And I just think with Jane Daniels, even coming off the injury, he's not going to be 100%. And if he can't move as well effectively, I think the Chargers defense, I also think they're just disciplined enough. They should be able to limit Jane Daniels inside the pocket. And especially when Terry McLaurin, I think Justin Herbert will have a better showing with his limited weapons compared to what Jane Daniels will, coming off an injury going into LA to win the game. Should be an interesting game, and if the Chargers defense continues to fold or they commit another 10 penalties for 100 yards, like, the Commanders could win this game, and I wouldn't be that surprised. But I'm going to take the Chargers here. They're angry. They're motivated. They have the better defense. They've played better a majority of the year. And I just think the Chargers are just the better team going into the game with their coaching staff and the confidence they have that they'll bounce back and show a bigger statement against a Commander team that at least has gotten through the Mariota double starts okay. And then they can start, moving forward in the right direction with Jaden starting with this week coming up. So that's why I like the Los Angeles Chargers here -2.5 and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the final two games, the Buffalo Bills over the New England Patriots. This one to me comes down to Buffalo has been the class of the AFC the entire year. They've been the best team. The defense has been able to pretty much play well. Josh Allen had kind of a pedestrian game, and he did throw his first interception of the year and a terrible ball into double coverage. But New England hasn't won in Buffalo in several years. Buffalo just continues to run effectively. That Pats defense at times showed that it can definitely get the ball moved on, especially through the air. Geno Smith threw for a 380 on him. They've had a propensity for turnovers, And I just think the Bills, they know who they are. I know the injuries are kind of mounting. Like, I think Bernard went down yesterday with an injury. And I think, the Pats, through at least 4 games, have been arguably respectable and competitive in every single game. And they have 2 wins fewer, but they're 500. And coming into Buffalo with that kind of confidence, and what I've seen out of the Bills couldn't cover an 18-point spread. They couldn't cover a 12-point spread the week before against Miami. I think they'll let the Pats hang around. The Pats are sound. the Pats can run the ball a little more effectively. I think Drake May's mobility can definitely extend plays for the Pats in order to keep them in position to win or cover. And that's when to go in New England here, plus 8.5. Because if the Bills couldn't cover against the Saints and the Dolphins coming off what they did, they definitely can, I believe, cover against the Patriot team. That might have them more motivated because of the competition. But I think with the Bills, just healthier roster, healthier offense, healthier defense, and Sean McDermott in the battle of defensive coach just has much more significant talent in every position compared to the Pats. Should be an interesting one, though. This is a big test for Drake May. I was thinking this is Drake May's first primetime game or first Sunday night game. First big-time, big spotlight individual game. And again, I think they can play well. I think they can cover, especially with how the Saints were able to cover against Buffalo last week in a division game. But at home, with that run offense, with how Josh Allen's playing, I think the Bills get a nice, solid 9 to 10 point win and move to 5-0 for the year. I also want to shout out real quickly Terrell Williams, the New England defensive coordinator. We found out that he has prostate cancer. So my best wishes to Mr. Terrell Williams, the Patriots defensive coordinator. Best wishes and your recovery to full recovery from your cancer. So, but that's all. Like Buffalo here to win straight up, but New England plus 8.5. And then finally, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm taking Kansas City here because the Jags, they've led the league in turnovers. They're 3-1. They're in a good position. They could be a playoff team. Trevor Lawrence has played solid football. But at the end of the day, and I'll put it this way, Jags fans, you can yell at me all you want. You can tell me that I'm not taking the Jags seriously. You know, they've been better. They've punched above their weight class and all that. Sure. And if you beat the Chiefs, I'll agree. The Jags are then going to be genuinely in the conversation with with the Bills and them as the best teams in the league. But you're playing one of the best primetime quarterbacks in football. And let's be honest here, even with all those turnovers, in the last 3 games where you forced 3 or more turnovers, you've only won by 1 score. And that's with all those turnovers you got in your favor. If the Chiefs do not turn the ball over, which I don't expect them to, I don't think the Jags can compete in this game. And even if it becomes a shootout, I'll take Patrick Mahomes and his weapons over Trevor Lawrence and his. And they're going to Jacksonville, which, let's be honest, that's not the greatest home field advantage in the first place anyway. It should be an interesting game. I think the Jags, they're competitive, they're spunky, they're in a position that nobody thought they would be in 4 weeks in. They're going to have that home crowd fired up. And the Chiefs, objectively, through the first few games, offensively, have struggled a bit more. The Jags can get a pass rush. That offensive line is young. So the Chiefs definitely can let the Jags hang around. But in a game like this, with the confidence they're coming off of, unless they were in for a letdown, I think the Chiefs should be able to hold out and grind out a good win against a respectable Jags team now to get to 3-2 and continue to move forward to one of the biggest games of the week next week when Kansas City goes to Detroit for a rematch of the 2023 Week 1 game, which I'll be really excited about. So that's why Kansas City are -3 and Kansas City straight up. And those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page. Check out other great people like Andrew Warren, Half Moon's Picks, Bridgewater's Finest. And I also do want to say very quickly that next week's video will be very short because of my work schedule and I have other stuff going on. So it either will come out Monday evening with just my predictions. I'm just going to go down, and if anybody has any thoughts and explanations, let me know. It either might come out Monday with just the predictions, or it might come out Tuesday afternoon. So I haven't decided yet, but I would say either expect the video Monday with just the picks run down, or Tuesday with more of a detailed explanation. And I'll throw it out to everybody. Would people rather see my video come out Monday or Tuesday with either just the quick picks, or Tuesday with more of the detailed explanation? So please put that in the comments down below. So, but until next week, everyone, good luck to all players, coaches, fellow prognosticators, and fantasy players. And until next week, this is Matthew Mack signing off. Until then, everyone, so long.